beginning of 2020, we had CYCLOPS recorded and was in the mixing stage. Then the world went into lockdown. Let's go back to August 2019. After we finished our third album, Down the Wave, we just carried on recording. We was over the moon how it had been received for a little band like ourselves, and it felt like things had gone up a notch. Once a week we would head to our little studio in Southend and would blast through some more of the 50 odd demos that had built up. The little studio we had was awesome. It was tucked away behind an old butcher's, and with no interruptions we could meet up once a week and get stuck in. We started laying down drums before moving on to recording bass and guitar. It made sense to leave it all set up in the room and just keep ploughing through them. I was going through sticks and cymbals like a beast. I was just loving it. I had some of the songs demoed for a while and was itching to lay them down properly. Lee would be laughing his head off. Some of the songs he's not even heard yet. A couple of months later, in December 2019, our landlord put the studios up for sale and we had less than a month left. To make the most of the time we had, I started ripping through all the demos we had left, sometimes doing 10 drum tracks in just a few hours, whilst Lee would be sitting pressing record and analysing every snare roll. Sometimes I'd go down on my own and just blast through a couple more. By January 2020, it was time to leave our studio. We moved everything into my little home studio at the end of the garden. There was piles of amps, guitars, pedals and recording equipment everywhere. We wondered what we was going to do without our studio and 50 odd songs unfinished. So we started tracking some guitars in my studio. Everything was coming together, and in 2 months we tracked most of the guitars and bass to CYCLOPS. Feeling pretty productive and in the flow, I wrote a couple of new tracks and was really liking these new ideas. So I booked a day down at Bleeding Ear Studios to record some drums, and this was tracks like Ape Suit and I think about 7 more. The next week we recorded guitars and bass to the drum tracks, and then we was up to date. In March we booked 2 more days down at Bleeding Ear and tracked half the vocals for the album. We were really getting ahead now and the album was almost done. The next thing we know, lockdown hits. No one is allowed to leave their house, meet friends, and the studios had to close. CYCLOPS is mostly recorded, however it still needs mixing. Plus we had 30 plus tracks of drums just sitting there unfinished. We worked out a way we could record at home and piece it all together. So Lee dug out his 12-year-old laptop and was slamming down all the bass tracks pretty quickly. He would send them over to me and I would add them to the session and then do all my guitar parts. And before we knew it, we was getting through all the leftover tracks. I built a simple little vocal booth in my studio at home. It made it a bit easier to record the rest of the vocals without disturbing the neighbours. This helped us get by until the studios could open again. And it was May or June time, so it was roasting hot in there. Must have been the hottest summer we've had in years. For the next couple of months we worked on all the extra non-album tracks, recording bass, guitars, vocals and overdubs, all remotely. With lockdown going on longer and longer, we knew it'd be some time before things went back to normal. And we held off getting CYCLOPS pressed up just yet. In June, we decided to release a selection of 6 tracks that wasn't going on the album and released them as the Hand Grenade EP. It got us our first play by John Kennedy on Radio X's Exposure.
And just before that, you heard a whole load of stuff. So straight after the Magic Gang, it was High Low with Slackers from their Ham Grenade EP, which they've just put out through Bandcamp on a pay what you like deal. And
the response was awesome. In July, things were going great. The EP had gained us some new fans, and we was busy working on our parts, still at home, without being able to see each other. Then in August, we released the Remote Control EP. I wrote and demoed this EP over 2 days during the first lockdown back in April. We originally planned for this EP to be released after Cyclops as a 7-inch only release. Until our buddy Sam heard the demos and was itching to get the drums recorded for him. He blasted through them in record time, and we managed to turn out the EP for another Bandcamp Friday. Got back to work on some final bits of Cyclops. After some thought and with some fresh set of ears, we decided to record most of the guitar and bass parts. This would take us another 6 weeks to finish, but it made such a difference. We had a chance to rethink what we was playing, also a chance to swap the track listing around with some of the newer tracks we'd recorded on the EPs. Recording at home wasn't an easy challenge, surrounded with family, limited by noise restrictions and using old computers. However, 36 tracks later, we'd finished everything we'd intended to do. Mixing and artwork followed, and since we was in the flow of doing the EPs, it didn't take long. I put together a rough version of the cover back in January, so with a few changes and some final details, we were done. To finish it all off, we got in contact with Todd Tobias to master all 36 tracks. Todd is an awesome producer, best known for his work with Robert Pollard and Guided by Voices. We are both massive fans of Guided by Voices and loved the idea of Todd mastering the EPs and the album. Sometimes we'd send him some tracks in the evening and they'd be mastered and back in our inbox by the morning. We had a 4-month wait for the vinyls to be pressed. We was excited how the last 2 EPs had gone. So for the next 4 months, we released the album in chunks, mixed with the extra tracks, as EPs on Bandcamp Friday, leading up to the official release of Cyclops on the 1st of January 2021. We're currently working our way through another 40 tracks, but that's another story.